Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging headfirst into, well, a really pivotal period of English history. We're looking at King Henry VIII's 6 wives.
Yeah, quite the saga. And to help us navigate this fascinating and pretty complex story, we're drawing on details from a history website overview.
Okay.
Our aim really is to pull out the key things about these marriages, the personalities and the massive consequences these unions had for England.
Right, trying to give you a clear picture, but without getting totally lost in every single detail.
Exactly. Engaging but focused.
So let's kick off with Catherine of Aragon. Her story, you could argue, is the most critical because, well, it basically triggered this huge shift for England.
Oh, absolutely. Catherine was a major figure right from the start. Daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, serious power there.
Mm-hmm.
She married Henry in 1509, just weeks after he took the throne. And crucially, she was the widow of his older brother, Arthur.
Ah, yes, that detail becomes pretty important later on, doesn't it?
Very important. And right away, the pressure was on Catherine. Produce a male heir, secure the Tudor dynasty.
And that pressure must have been enormous. I mean, the Tudors were still relatively new, weren't they?
Exactly. They needed that stability. Catherine had multiple pregnancies, but sadly, only one child survived, their daughter, Mary, born in 1516.
23 years. She was his queen. And it's interesting, that point from historian Tracy Berman, she might have been the only one Henry truly loved.
Well, loved, perhaps, but with that huge caveat, Borman suggests Henry saw her as the model wife in, almost every way except for providing a son.
That one vital thing.
That one thing. And this frustration, combined with Henry's, let's be honest, obsession with his legacy, it started to sour things.
Right, and didn't he have an illegitimate son around this time?
He did, yeah. An affair with Elizabeth Bessie Blount led to Henry Fitzroy in 1519, his only acknowledged one. But it was really his growing feelings for Anne Boleyn in the 1520s that, well, set everything off course.
It's hard to really grasp the scale of the consequences, isn't it? Just from that one infatuation.
Completely. Henry became fixated on getting an annulment from Catherine.
And his argument was based on her first marriage to his brother Arthur.
Yes, he claimed their marriage had been consummated, making his own marriage to Catherine invalid in the eyes of the church.
Which Catherine denied fiercely.
She did, and this put the Pope in a really tough spot. Remember Catherine's family connections? The Holy Roman Emperor was her nephew.
Ah, tricky politics.
Very. So when the Pope refused the annulment, Henry just defied him, took matters into his own hands.
And that refusal was the spark.
The direct spark. It led straight to Henry rejecting papal authority, divorcing Catherine anyway, and establishing the Church of England. The English Reformation, right there.
All stemming from his desire for a new wife and an heir. Incredible.
It shows how personal desires could just ignite massive international and religious change.
And Catherine's end was quite sad, wasn't it?
It was poignant. She died at Kimbleton Castle in 1536, stripped of her title, officially just a princess dowager.
Wow. Okay, let's move to the woman at the heart of all that upheaval. Anne Boleyn.
Anne Boleyn, yes, a very different background. She spent time in the French court, which was known for its sophistication, its politics.
So she would have been quite savvy.
Oh, almost certainly. And interestingly, her own sister, Mary, had already had a brief affair with Henry a few years earlier, around 1520.
Right. But Anne wasn't interested in being just a mistress.
Not at all. She was adamant it had to be marriage, which tells you a lot about her ambition, her self-worth.
Especially after the whole Catherine drama. That was a bold move.
Extremely bold. They finally married, secretly at first, then publicly in January of 1533. And their daughter, Elizabeth, was born that September.
Elizabeth I, eventually. But initially, the hope was still for a son.
Desperately. But Anne then suffered a series of stillbirths, and, well, Henry's interest started to fade again.
It's just such a stark reminder of how precarious their position was. It always came back to the male heir.
It did, and you see a similar pattern beginning, but Anne's story takes a much, much darker turn.
How so?
Well, when Henry took another mistress, Anne apparently reacted furiously. There are stories of her getting quite involved in court politics to try and remove the rival.
Really? Like plots and things?
Reportedly, yes, even involving her sister-in-law, Lady Rochford, which led to Rochford being banished from court for a time. It highlights just how intense and ruthless court life could be.
But things escalated beyond just removing rivals, didn't they?
Oh, dramatically. Henry seemed determined to get rid of Anne. He, or perhaps his ministers like Cromwell, leveled charges of adultery and treason against her.
Charges that most historians now think were basically fabricated.
That's the consensus, yes. A convenient, if brutal, way to end the marriage and clear the path for a new wife. It just shows the sheer power imbalance.
Chilling, really.
It is. The marriage was annulled just 2 days before her execution. She was beheaded on Tower Green, May 19th, 1536.
And there's still some mystery around the exact legal basis for it all.
Yes, the specific pretext for the annulment isn't entirely clear, nor are all the details surrounding the execution terms. It underlines the political maneuvering behind it all. A high-stakes game, indeed.
A truly brutal end. And then, unbelievably, just days later, Henry marries again. Jane Seymour.
Jane Seymour. And her story has some interesting links back to the others. She'd been a lady-in-waiting to both Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn.
Wow, imagine the dynamics there.
Exactly. And get this, their mothers were first cousins raised together.
No way. That was a created tension.
Huge tension, apparently. Sources suggest Anne and Jane definitely clashed once Henry started showing interest in Jane. Fierce rivalry for the king's favor.
Talk about complicated relationships. But Jane, she was the one who finally delivered.
She was. She gave Henry what he'd wanted for so long. A male heir, Edward VI, born in October 1537.
The Tudor line finally seemed secure.
For the moment, yes. But the triumph was incredibly brief and tragic. Jane died just weeks later, complications from childbirth.
Oh no, so soon after.
Yes. Which, in a way, cemented her place in Henry's memory as the sort of perfect queen, the one who gave him his son and then conveniently died without causing more trouble.
And he chose to be buried next to her.
He did, at St. George's Chapel, a sign of her unique status in his eyes.
Okay, so from high drama and tragedy, we shift gears a bit with Anne of Cleves. This was more political.
Very much so. This marriage was engineered mainly by Thomas Cromwell, Henry's chief minister. The goal was a strategic alliance in Europe.
Right, linking up with German Protestants.
Exactly. Anne was the sister of the Duke of Cleves, and Henry's initial impression, well, came from a portrait.
Ah, the famous portrait by Holbein.
That's the one. He saw paintings of Anne and her sister and apparently found Anne's image more appealing. It shows how much rested on, well, appearances.
But then she arrived in England.
And, oh boy, January 1st, 1540, by all accounts, Henry was instantly disappointed. Deeply disappointed.
She didn't look like the portrait.
Apparently not, or at least not to his liking. The flattering portrait hadn't quite captured the reality or his expectation of it.
So he tried to get out of it.
Desperately. But the political wheels were already too far in motion. They married on January 6th.
But it didn't last long, did it?
Remarkably short. Only 6 months. And credit to Anne, she handled it incredibly well. She agreed to a divorce, quite diplomatically.
Smart move. Probably saved her life.
Quite possibly. And unlike Catherine of Aragon or Anne Boleyn, she actually did rather well out of it.
Really? How so?
She got a very generous settlement, castles, income, lived peacefully in England as the king's beloved sister until she died in 1557. She adapted.
A survivor.
Oh.
Okay, next up. Catherine Howard.
Catherine Howard. Now, she was young, very young, probably late teens, when she married Henry in July 1540.
And Henry, by this point, was, well, not exactly in his prime.
Not at all. Overweight, health problems, difficulty walking. So you can perhaps see the appeal of a vibrant young bride. She'd actually been a lady-in-waiting to Anne of Cleves.
Another lady in waiting. And Henry was happy at first.
Apparently ecstatic. Absolutely besotted. Showered her with gifts, called her his rose without a thorn. It seemed like a fresh start for him.
His rose without a thorn. That sounds a bit ominous in hindsight.
Doesn't it just? Because that happiness, well, it didn't last. Less than a year in, rumors started swirling. Serious rumors.
Infidelity.
Yes. Evidence came out about relationships she'd had before marrying Henry, and possibly continuing indiscretions during the marriage. The court was always watching.
And for Henry, that would have been the ultimate betrayal.
Absolutely. Treasonous, in his view. Things moved very quickly. She was accused of adultery and treason.
And executed like Anne Boleyn.
Just like Anne. Executed at Tower Green, February 13th, 1542. Another queen, another tragic, swift end.
Goodness. All right, finally, wife number 6. The one who outlived him, Catherine Parr.
Catherine Parr. Yes, she married Henry in July 1543. She was different again, already a widow, twice over, actually. Known for being intelligent, educated, quite spirited.
And she brought some stability. Henry was really declining by that.
She did. She seems to have managed the increasingly volatile court well and acted almost as a nurse or companion to the aging, ailing king.
But even she wasn't entirely safe, was she? Something about her religious views.
That's right. She was interested in Protestantism, the reformist ideas, and that actually put her in serious danger at one point. Henry, swayed by conservative enemies of hers at court, apparently ordered her arrest.
Wow. How did she get out of that?
She managed it very skillfully, talked her way out of it, essentially appealing to Henry's ego, saying she only debated religion with him to learn and to distract him from his ailments. Very clever.
Shows her intelligence and, well, nerve.
Absolutely. And she's seen as having had a really significant positive influence on court culture, religion, the role of women, and especially on the education of Henry's 3 children.
And she helped reconcile Henry with his daughters.
Yes, Borman credits her with persuading Henry to put both Mary and Elizabeth back into the line of succession. Hugely important. She even acted as regent when Henry was away at war in France.
Quite a remarkable figure then, more than just the survivor wife.
Definitely. She provided stability, influenced the future monarchs, and navigated the dangers of Henry's court. She outlived him, dying herself in 1548.
So looking back at all 6, it's just an incredible, dramatic, and often brutal story.
It really is, and you see so clearly how Henry VIII's personal life, especially his relentless quest for a male heir and political security, just fundamentally reshaped England. That break with Rome is the huge one.
Absolutely. The personal drama is completely tangled up with massive political and religious change.
Hmm.
And the fates of these women, so different, each compelling story in her own right.
They really offer this unique, often heartbreaking glimpse into that whole Tudor world.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much the private lives, the desires, maybe even the flaws of powerful individuals can ripple outwards and have such huge lasting effects on nations, on institutions.
Exactly. What does that tell us about the connection between the personal and the public, the private lives, and the course of history? Maybe something for you, the listener, to ponder. Are there echoes of that even today?